Okay, welcome back to NostalgiaCast. I'm Johnny Craddock.
And I'm Darin Lundberg.
And this episode, we're going to talk about a movie from 1984 called Cloak and Dagger, directed by Richard Franklin and starring Dabney Coleman and E.T.'s Henry Thomas. So before we do that, let's recap our last episode, which was Back to the Future. We had my brother-in-law and author and artist, Luke R. Harris. He came on and he joined us for that conversation. And Darin, we both really liked that movie growing up, and I know we both thought highly of it. And I know Luke did as well, which is why he picked it. But we did talk about how we kind of thought we shouldn't talk about it. But then once we kind of started saying, well, maybe we should, we can kind of get different topics thrown in there. And I think we had a really fun conversation about Back to the Future. What do you think?
Yeah, every now and then I think it's good to, because there's a lot of pushback on Twitter or on the internet about how, oh, you just like that movie from the 80s because it's nostalgic for you. Like you just love because you loved it back then. And some movies, like, yeah, you could think that, which is the whole point of our podcast. But other times I'm like, it's not nostalgia if the movie is that damn good. You know what I'm talking? It's like there are story, narrative choices that are established, screenplay choices, directing choices that are very formative, that kind of feed into the movies of today. Like when you talk about Spielberg, like people kind of downplay his contribution, but a lot of the Marvel movies have a lot of Spielbergian touches that would not be there. You know, a lot of the blockbusters today would not be there if it weren't for the Spielbergs, or weren't for George Lucas, or weren't for, Back to the Future or Tron or stuff like that. It's like, these are very formative movies that have, well, maybe not Tron, but you know what I'm saying? Movies that made an impact that reverberate today. So I think it's good to kind of tackle those movies just to remind us of where our love for cinema and where our love for these entertainments come from.
Yeah, I think so too. Back then, they focused more on story and they focused on, cinematic elements, which is what made them great movies. They were bad filmmakers today, just we're kind of a little bit lazy and we use, technology more than we should, I think. And we kind of have left the story department, which we kind of, I think, focus on more, which would make the movies better today. But that's why movies back then are so good.
Yep, absolutely.
But anyway, let's go ahead and get into Cloak and Dagger. But before we do, let's watch the trailer.
Is murder, spying, and sabotage.
This is starting to get good.
What?
Just like Cloak and Dagger.
Fire!
Now any move could be his last.
Trying to kill us.
Come on, this is Cloak and Dagger. For real, it's what you always wanted.
Cloak and Dagger.
Now playing at a theater near you. Consult your local listing.
Okay, so Cloak and Dagger, 1984, directed by Richard Franklin and starring Henry Thomas from E.T. and Dabney Coleman, the great Dabney Coleman. So I want to go over my history real fast, if you don't mind, because I haven't seen this movie in a long time. I saw it a few times when I was like 11 or 12 with my friend, a good friend of mine. He loved this movie. And so whenever I'd go to his house for whatever reason, he'd put this movie on. So I probably saw it 3 or 4 times. And then I'd never watched it again. My wife claims that I showed it to her about 10 years ago, but I swear I didn't. I don't remember showing it to her. I don't think I did. So whoever she watched it with, it wasn't me. But she claims it was me. So I haven't seen it for like maybe 30 years, a long time. But it was really fun to go back and watch it again. And it was on my list from the very beginning when we started making lists of movies that we were going to talk about for this podcast. Like Cloak and Dagger came up really quick. Like, oh yeah, that's got to be on there. That's, by far, one of my top choices. Yeah, that's really my history with it. Just watch it with my friend. That's about it. Like, do you have a history that you want to go over with us?
Well, it's kind of like when we talked about Back to the Future, I do not remember seeing this in a theater. I know for a fact that I did see Back to the Future in a theater because it's one of those movies that's like a cultural phenomenon that my mom would want to take me to. But again, I don't have specific memories of my time watching it. This movie, it has been a part of my lexicon, I guess you could say. I always remember it. It mostly has to do with the father-son thing, because I don't know if I've mentioned this on the show before, but that's my kryptonite. Like, obviously, Field of Dreams has that. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 of all things is the only superhero movie that I've ever actually sobbed during because of the stepfather-father stuff in there. There's movies like Frequency, which we mentioned in Back to the Future, where there's a part where Quaid and Caviezel are talking to each other, and they haven't spoken. And Caviezel says, "I love you, Dad." And I remember sitting in the theater, I just started crying. I'm like, what's going on? Like, what is this salty liquid coming, and then because it's dad's, like it's just my
Yeah.
kryptonite. So the thing with Hal and with Davy, it's just always been a part of, in my brain, like kind of hardwired. But again, I don't remember. I would say that I didn't see this in the theater. My mom could probably tell you that we did, but I don't remember seeing this. I just know that it's been a part of my movie going diet, so to speak. And just like you, it was on my list when we started this. Like Cloak and Dagger's got to be one that we talk about, because I think we started the show and then we had that big hiatus.
Yeah.
And then I remember showing this to my kids. Elizabeth, like you said, talking about Ruth, you don't remember her showing that to her. Elizabeth doesn't remember sitting with us to watch the show, watch the movie.
Okay.
But when I showed it to our younger kids just this time, she said, "Oh, I do remember this. So we must have watched it within the last 10 years." So it's just kind of funny, those kind of how those things tie together. But again, it's been a part of my memory. I know I've always liked it. And it's when we watched it that time, I just remember, oh, this is happening, or oh, I didn't notice this before. It just a lot of neat touches that
there were a lot of things that I'd forgotten were in the movie. I was like, oh yeah, that part's in there. Oh yeah. So that was really fun to go back and see all that stuff that I forgot.
Right.
Also real quick, I just want to mention this, that I first of all love Dabney Coleman as Jack Flack. He's great as Hal Osborne too, but I like, the Jack Flack character. I've always thought the Jack Flack was a cool character name. And for some reason, it just reminds me of the Jack Kerouac like name, like the beatnik poet.
Yeah. Did you notice what I really, the first thing off the bat that I liked that Coleman was playing two specifically different characters. Did you notice? Yeah. Like Jack Flack is all confident and he's cool and he's exactly what a kid. And then the dad is he's Dabney Coleman, he's just natural. I just like that as soon as you see Hal, like Dabney Coleman show up and your brain goes, oh, his dad is going to be in the form of Jack Flack. Yeah. But as soon as Dabney Coleman as Hal showed up, I'm like, oh, he's playing two completely different characters. And you notice that from the first few seconds of him talking.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah.
I thought that was great. Yeah. So what was funny too, is this is a movie, like I'm reading about it. This is like the third, like it's part of a trilogy of video game movies, like after The Last Starfighter and Tron, where these movies are based on video games.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I knew it was based on a video game. In fact, the Atari game that it's based off of was in development. It was called Agent X.
Yeah.
And, it wasn't quite done yet, and they needed a game for the movie, and so they gave him Agent X, and that's why Jack Flack's character in the game is Agent X, and then they went back and renamed the video game Agent X Cloak and Dagger. So it came out as Cloak and Dagger, but I never played that game when I had the Atari. I always, had the Cubert and the Jungle Hunt and those type of games, the Star Wars games. Yeah. But I never played Cloak and Dagger. Did you have a system when you were younger? Did you have one of those?
The Atari? No. What I remember is our Apple IIe computer, and I remember playing Sleuth on it, which is just like, it's a mystery thing, like a Perot kind of thing, where you're just a little face and you go around to different rooms and you encounter different characters. So that was the breadth of, like, as far as Atari goes. And then obviously the Nintendo Entertainment System, which is still my number one game system. I think in the movie that the game screens that we see is from the arcade game. It's not actually from the like the home game. Okay. I think I read that. So, which is, you can tell from the graphics just being huge and kind of, I don't know. I thought that was fun.
And also I thought it was really fun seeing William Forsythe as Morris,
as the typical internet nerd, right? He's just he's kind of slovenly and he's got the beard, and he has when he plays the game, he's got like the like the dumb face that you kind of go blank on, that we all got.
And those weird glasses too, those Coke bottle glasses. But I liked his character, and I was sad to see him go so soon.
Right.
Also, I should mention this, because when they do shoot Morris, there's no blood splatter, and so I think the reason being is because they wanted that PG rating. They wanted to go for the the younger kids who were the target audience at the time. They didn't want to show too much gore and blood.
Right. He shot through the eye, though. Did you notice that? Like it's like, holy crap, they shot him through the eye, which we'll talk about it in a little bit. But I liked how it doesn't kind of shy away from the ugliness of the world that Davy is kind of involved himself in. It's never, Jack Flack's there trying to keep it all fun and light, but it's not, as an audience, you're like, this isn't fun. And then it's just really, it's it's just really great watching Davy's character kind of develop, and he realizes slowly, especially when he's in the trunk with Morris and he's like, this was my friend, you know, it's just kind of hitting him. That was just one of the many touches that I thought was great, which just briefly mentioned, the director you mentioned is Richard Franklin, who directed Psycho 2. Have you ever seen Psycho 2?
I've seen Psycho 2. I don't remember if I liked it very much or not. I can't remember, but he also did one called FX2. And I remember liking the movie FX, which I think has Brian Dennehy in both, right?
Yeah. Yep. Brian Brown is the star of that one. He also did a movie called
Brian Dennehy. Didn't you say
Brian Dennehy? But then Brian Brown is the main star.
Oh, okay.
The FX guy. Franklin also did a movie called Road Games, which had Stacy Keach and Jamie Lee Curtis in it. It's like this low budget Australian slasher movie where Stacy Keach is a trucker trying to stop a serial killer, which is really effective as an 80s thriller. So, but it's weird that watching this, there's some directing decisions that he does that's not too great, but others that are fantastic. I just wonder why he hasn't had more of a career. And then, well, as far as Psycho 2 goes, what impressed me about that one is when you hear a sequel to a movie like Psycho, you're like, come on, man, like, why would you do that? But Psycho 2, I just remember being kind of a neat little twist and being an unexpectedly kind of deep, like, continuation of the Norman Bates story. So Psycho 2, which is not fantastic, is still kind of an admirable, especially as a sequel that nobody wanted. The guy that wrote the screenplay, Tom Holland, not that Tom Holland. I know a lot of people are thinking this is the kid from Spider-Man. He's immortal. But this guy, Tom Holland, who also wrote the screenplay for Psycho 2, he wrote the screenplay for Fright Night. He wrote the screenplay for Child's Play. So he's very recognizable as far as genre movies go. So, you know, there Road Games, Child's Play. These are movies that are very respectable, even though, you know, part of the genre is not really respectable. Like, people don't really respect the genre as much as they maybe should. And we've talked about slasher movies before, but having those two like involved in some kind of quality, you know, slasher movie, you know, tropes and stuff like that, I think it helped this movie quite a bit. Yeah,
I mean, he probably was considered an A-list director back then, but like I say, his career didn't last very long. Yeah. So it's kind of a shame it didn't.
Yeah. Richard Franklin.
Richard Franklin, right.
Okay.
Sorry, I thought we were talking about the director.
No, same thing.
So Dabney Coleman, we talked about, he's great. The two roles he played, but Henry Thomas, real quick, you know, he's famous for E.T. and this. Really, that's all I can really think of. Like, was there anything else like after this that he was well known for?
Well, I think he starred in Psycho 4, which is like a TV. He played Norman Bates. He's Mike Flanagan, who directed The Haunting of Hill House and Midnight Mass, that had just been out on Netflix. He's kind of had a resurgence there. Also, he was in Legends of the Fall with Brad Pitt. He played the brother that, spoiler, got killed during the war. But Henry Thomas is just kind of, he's still got the baby face today. He is impressive in Haunting of Hill House. It's a series that Elizabeth and I really, really enjoyed. But it's just part of the thing, you know, when you see the behind the scenes or when Spielberg was casting E.T. and it's the casting when they're Henry Thomas is doing his screen test and he's just, you know, don't take him, and he's crying and it just stops. And then you hear Spielberg go, you got it. This is your part. And so I think Henry Thomas is just, as a kid actor, I know that we watch a lot of kids and they tend to be grating or obnoxious, but I just think he's very natural. Like in E.T., you can say that he's got the obnoxious tendencies, but he does it in a way that's real, that's recognizable, that oh, that's how I was as a kid. It's not like, you know, I'm not trying to repick on the Goonies, but the Goonies, when I watched that, I'm like, this doesn't remind me of me. Like, they're too over the top and they're doing too many things where I just don't buy the reality of what they're doing. Yeah. And we talked about that in the episode, but Henry Thomas, just as Elliot, he had this very natural, and again, that's one of the big reasons why E.T. means so much to me, because I recognize, and a lot of people did, I recognize Elliot as me, a lot of the family situations. And especially in this, he's still got that natural stuff. There are parts where he's, you know, he plays like the goofball kid where he's playing the games and he's too into him. He plays like he doesn't delve into it too much because the screenplay, number one, doesn't ask him to, but as a kid, he doesn't really know what he's dealing with. He knows that he's missing his mom, but he doesn't like ever say it. And it's more, it shows you, which is a very impressive screenplay tactic. It never tells you what he's going through as you're seeing him on screen. But there are moments, there is a part where I thought was funny, where they're being chased in the car and Jack Flack keeps popping in and out of the back seat and the front seat. And I'm like, how does he do? And then it's funny because he's imaginary. Obviously he can do that. And there's a shot that just made me laugh. It's a throwaway gag where he crashes the car. And the last time we saw Jack was in the back seat. And then all of a sudden it's a shot up from the side of Davy. And you see Jack pop up outside. And Davy notices and he looks back kind of like at the seat, like, how did you get? And it's just a quick throwaway gag that I laughed out loud. I just thought that was such, for a kid actor, that's such a great moment. How did he pulled that off so brilliant. I just, and he had a bunch of touches like that. I thought he was great. Yeah,
I thought he did a good job. I will say, I think his performance was better in E.T. because, like you say, the story called for more as far as, the acting is concerned. Yeah. And this story was more serious. It was more like, the cheesy,
not as fanciful.
Yeah. So he played that well, but it didn't really call for a lot of emotion per se. I mean, because he was trying to keep it cool. He was trying to be the spy. And so I think when it comes to that, I think he did a good job. But I would say his E.T. performance was definitely better than this one.
Right. Well, not to knock Franklin or anything, but it might also have to do something with the direction. Obviously, Spielberg is peerless as far as child actors go. I don't know if there's another filmmaker out there that works with child actors like Spielberg does, the way that he's able to talk to them. So,
sorry.
Yeah. No, fine. I mean, Henry Thomas, obviously he's more established and he was more of a star, and this one more of a drawing point, but you're right. I mean, it calls them to do a lot more heavy lifting.
The young girl, I forget her name, her real name, but the name Kim is her character name.
Yeah, it's Christina Nigra, I think is her name. Nigra, I hope I'm pronouncing that right.
I thought she was terrible, and I'll just leave it at that, I guess. But I kept thinking as I was watching the movie, how great would it be if Drew Barrymore was in that role? You know what I mean? Like she would have brought so much more to the character than the lady who played her did.
Right. Well, I bring this up. I think I brought this up before, but difference between like Harry Potter 1 and 2 and Harry Potter Prisoner of Azkaban is Chris Columbus just needed to get certain emotions out of his kid actors. So he would tell Daniel Radcliffe or Emma Watson or Rupert Grint, okay, he would say the lines exactly how they needed to say it, and they would just repeat it, like exactly how he told them to do it.
Yeah.
And then when Cuarón came in with Prisoner of Azkaban, he made them write essays about their characters. He made them feel it. And so that's when they started to establish themselves more as good actors. But the Negan character, the Kim character, I think she's fine. Like when I talk about obnoxious kids, she fits that trope. Like it seems like she's just saying her lines as she was told to say them.
Yeah. Okay.
I like the part where she's talking to the mom and the mom like asking about Hal, and she goes, he's not your type. I thought that was funny, but that's more screenplay stuff than actor stuff. And the only note I had is internet trolls must hate Kim because of the way she just doesn't go along. And she's always making fun of Davy's games and she thinks it's ridiculous.
Yeah, and some other things like this kind of not in character is like when they dangle her over the cliff and like she just doesn't scream. She doesn't like.
She's like, oh, this.
She's being dangled over a cliff, and it's like you're about ready to be dropped into to liquid water, and you're not screaming. So,
right.
And all the other things they go through, and there really isn't any kind of like, they're not really scared. They're just kind of going through like it is a game, and so that's kind of neat in a way, but also it's kind of like, well, a real kid would. Show some fear.
Yeah. Well, I hate that I keep bringing this up, but the scene where Davy's trying to exchange the cartridge with Rice, and he shoots him with the blood, the fake blood, and the way that it's staged, where you have the Haberman and the Alvarez character who are up on the cliff, you have Rice, the way like they're trying to get away, and so he shoots him in the face, and then he goes, "Oh my gosh, what is this?" And then they have to, just very lackadaisically, you see Davy run and grab Kim, and they, "What do we do? I think we should go and do this." And they run off, and it's like, get them! Like the bad guys are just they're not chasing after these kids. So again, it's just the direction. They had a few parts. We'll come back and we'll talk about a little more of the direction, but as far as the weaker stuff of that goes, they had some stuff that it kept doing that where it was like, well, that staging was weird.
Yeah, like I say, everything was very convenient the way it was played out. Like it just so happens that Kim is in the interrogation room right across from the gate in the airport, right where Davy needs her to be, or the taxi cab driver is right there and willing to take him to the airport at the last second. All these things kept happening, and it was like, oh well, that's convenient. Oh well, that's convenient. And then also it just so happens to be convenient that he has this game that he's obsessed with as he's trying to deal with the coping with his mom's death. And he has an imaginary friend that happens to be a spy, and he gets like entangled in this, spy espionage plot. So it's just convenient. So what if what if the imaginary friend happened to be a pastry chef or something, or like a or an imaginary pink elephant? Who knows what it's been like then,
That would be a fast movie, I think. Talking about the conveniences, I think the thing that I was laughing at, the screenplay does a lot of good, honest, like deep stuff, and it covers a lot of things that I wasn't expecting. But then it also has parts like, and what was the note I had? I was like, at the end, as soon as like he gets away or from when what's his name, Averman crashes the car, like from that moment, and then they have like the fight with Rice and Alvarez, then you have the race to the airport, you have the dad talking with Kim, you have Hal talking with Kim's mom, you have Kim at the airport, you have the old couple that shows up. I wrote here like all this action, like battling the bad guys, the police finding the dead bodies, like Hal calls up and, oh, we found these bodies down at the dock, and Davey like finagling with the taxi drivers, which is funny seeing Louis Anderson show up just for a little bit. The trips to the airport, all this takes place in 36 minutes.
Yeah, I noticed that too.
Because it's very specifically, it has that Irish shot of the bomb in Kim's backpack.
Yeah.
It kind of lets you know things are taking place in real time. And it's doing these things. And you talked about the interrogation scene in that security office. I love the shot. You can see the clock in the background.
On the wall, right? Yeah.
It's like counting down. It's like 11:54. They cut something 11:55, which makes sense. And it's cool that they did that. But I was like, yeah, but it's not going to take like 1 minute to travel from wherever, like the Alamo or wherever they are, and go to the airport, So I like that they did that, but they just compressed a lot of time. I just thought
even when they're in the plane trying to, disarm the bomb, and then we had to drop Davey out of the window. Right. Like all that stuff takes time.
Yeah,
like, more than 2 minutes. I swear, it's been like
right.
15 minutes by now. But anyway,
yeah, I like that. So what? And again, we can get hung up on that stuff. I just think it's a lot of things do that. Like The Dark Knight Rises got caught up in some time stuff. There's a fight scene in Dragon, the Bruce Lee story, where he's supposed to beat a guy in a minute, and the fight takes like 3 minutes. So
yeah,
they do that quite a bit in movies.
Yeah, even with all that, I still really enjoy the movie because I still think it creates suspense, and it's successful in making you feel for Davey and go along this adventure with Davey, and so you still feel that. And so I don't mind that they play with the time here and there because it's still successful in being suspenseful. So
right. So let's. I said before in our preamble to recording, I wanted to talk about the Hitchcockian stuff last, but I think it'd be better to end on the deeper meanings that we've kind of hinted at in the screenplay. Okay. Let's talk about that last. But you're talking about like a lot of the skill and things like that. Like the thing that I really loved about the direction. Is that there were a lot of Hitchcockian touches. Like you can tell that Richard Franklin has done his homework and he likes watching Hitchcock movies because there's a lot of that. There's the MacGuffin, first of all. Like the word MacGuffin gets tossed around a lot. I know that Hitchcock created that term back in the 40s, but people think like the Ark of the Covenant is a MacGuffin. They think the R2D2 knock list, stuff like that. The knock list, I guess that kind of ties in. Like watching or reading like studies of the MacGuffin, the main thing that they point out is a MacGuffin should never take precedence over characters' wants and needs. It should never take precedence over the plot. Like stuff like the Codex and Man of Steel or something like that, it really takes a lot of importance and it keeps building on it and keeps going back to it. I think a good MacGuffin, it takes the importance out of it. Like the Maltese Falcon and the Maltese Falcon. It's not, it's not a big part. It's just something like mundane that the characters are after that means something, but that's not what the point is. When you get too involved in a MacGuffin, like the stupid skull in the fourth Indiana Jones, where it's treated like, too important and it's kind of silly. And if it takes center stage, it kind of takes the importance of it. Pulp Fiction has a good MacGuffin with the briefcase. It doesn't matter what's in it. Like the whole point is they're after it. Like as soon as you explain what's in it and the purpose of the briefcase, it's like, well, now the mystery's gone out of it.
Right.
So I think
it's just a bunch of lights. That's all it was. It was lights.
Yeah, that's it. and that you like speculate a lot of that. I just thought that the MacGuffin in this, and again, I thought it was funny. You could tell that the screenwriters didn't really know what video games were because they kept calling it a tape. And I was like, it's a cartridge, guys. It's a game cartridge. It's not a tape.
Right.
But you know, the way it's like what it has secret plans for stealth bomber or something like that. But it's never important. Like they never make a big deal of what it means, what they're trying to do with it. It's just the characters that are trying to get it.
Right.
And so I think the MacGuffin works beautifully in this because it never takes precedence over the emotions. The other thing I like too is a lot of the Hitchcockian touches. Like there's a shot where, you know, Davy and Kim get away from Rice, and like we just talked about, and they're on a bus, and through the back you can see the van like drive up, and they don't notice it. And it creates suspense, which is what Hitchcock is known for. There's a scene later where Davy and Jack are at a phone booth, and you see the van come up, like the lights, and you notice it before they do, and it gets suspense pieces. What were you going to say?
Oh, just the shot on the bus. I liked it when Davy gets off and Kim stays on, and the camera's still on the bus too, and just the blocking and staging they put in place for Davy to still be seen running through the yard and having the bad guys chase him while the camera's still following him and still seeing Kim. It was great. It was just really well done.
Right.
And I also like this shot when Jack Flack and Davy were in the mall and they're walking up the stairs, and then like he's talking to Jack Flack and people around him are like staring at him like, who's he talking to? Because they can't see Jack Flack. But then like as soon as it goes up the stairs, you know, Jack Flack isn't there anymore, but he's still talking to nobody. It's just great how they accomplished that. I liked it a lot.
Nice touch. There was a shot that seemed right out of, again, a Notorious or a North by Northwest, where Davy's in the building and he walks up and you can see his reflection in the building, like across the alleyway. And then you see Jack walk up next to him and there's no reflection of Jack in the other window. I just thought that was a great touch. Obviously they could do it with projection or something like that. And then I thought it was funny because you see, and it's great because you see like a woman or something like that, like in a window that Jack notices. And then Davy walks up to the next stairwell or whatever. And then you see the shot of Alvarez and Haberman killing the guy or whatever. And that's a very, you know, it reminded me of Sisters from Brian De Palma, who's a very Hitchcock savvy director. He takes a lot of his stuff. So that shot was very Hitchcockian. I thought it was funny though when the scientist or the guy in the lab coat comes out and it's like in the same stair. I'm like, oh, I thought that was another building. Like I didn't know that it was a reflection of this building.
Right. I just want to know where the body went and why no one cares where the body went. I'm thinking like you gave him the cartridge
and how they're able to get so fast, get that away.
Fast, yeah.
But again, it does that thing where the innocent man who's wrongly accused, when Davy goes and it's like he's crying wolf, right? And he comes back and there's no body, and you're thinking, well, did he imagine that? And then Rice comes down and Rice says there's no body, but then it does the shot where Rice looks down at where the body was and he holds the cartridge or whatever, or what is not the cartridge, but he's holding something. Is Davy's softball, that's what it was. Where you know, oh, he was telling the truth. So that's a very Hitchcockian thing. You're talking about staging and blocking. I thought the scene where Davy's trying to get on the ferry and Alvarez and Haberman are trying to follow after him, that elongated set piece, I was like, this is very Hitchcockian. It's very suspenseful.
Yeah, and they keep moving seats and stuff.
Yeah. Or they almost weren't let on the bus on the ferry, but then the woman has her wallet stolen, so they have to leave, and then they get on, and then and that whole thing. And then you notice in the background the Eunice character or whatever, that you see her and you don't really notice her until you've seen the movie before. But this time especially, like, oh, there she is in the background. There's the old woman that turns out to be the bad guy. You know what I mean? And she notices him, and you can see that. Again, that scene, just very well done, very Hitchcockian. I don't think you can escape that what it's trying to homage, what it's trying to call back to. And I think Franklin does a fantastic job at scenes like that because it works. It doesn't just work as, oh, this is obviously Hitchcock. It works as an actual solid suspense sequence, which I think is great. It's hard to do, especially in a kids movie.
Yeah, I agree with you. Did you want to go over the themes real quick? You think we can?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so we've talked about the performances, we talked about the video game stuff and a lot of the conveniences and things like that. So I think the natural and the Hitchcockian things. So we're kind of building to where I think the seriousness and where the weight of the movie comes from. I think that's a natural place to kind of lead our conversation on. But yeah, what impressed you about the themes? And we talked about it again briefly before.
Well, I mean, first of all, it's basically Davy's having to learn to trust people because, you know, Jack Flack's always telling him, don't trust that guy, don't trust him. You know, he loses his mom. He tells his dad that this is happening, and dad doesn't believe him, so his dad doesn't trust him. He really doesn't have anybody but Jack Flack, but Jack's telling him, hey, don't trust people. And so like I kind of felt like trust was a big thing. Like it was like he has to learn, you know, to trust. And at the end, you know, of course, it ends up being his dad as the real life hero, and he finally can, you know, trust somebody again.
Yeah, there's even funny stuff too with like you're talking about trust. I had that a note like, you know, Jack Flack makes him steal the Cloak and Dagger game, and then there's a part later where he like, what are we waiting for? I'm waiting for the traffic light. Well, this isn't going to get us anywhere. And he like leads Davey into oncoming traffic. And I'm like, wow, this Jack Flack is not a great role model, is he? So you're talking about trust. So that's another neat touch. This guy that he has all his faith in is kind of leading him, you know, he's an imaginary, but he's kind of leading him astray.
Yeah, I mean, he actually, you know, encourages him to like lead the fire and get that one guy killed the other guy, and then actually, you know, steps aside. And so this is the question I had when this moment happens, when Jack Flack, you know, is trying to encourage Davey to shoot the guy with the gun before he shoots him. Well, while he's monologuing, by the way, he steps aside, and does the guy actually see Jack Flack, or does he just kind of look over to where Davey's, you know, attention is focused at, and end up shooting the wall because he is so worried about what Davey's looking at, which is what I want to know. Does he see him or does he not see him?
Well, it's interesting. I get what they were going for. I get that they were trying to like make it like, did he or didn't he? They were just trying to hint at that. We just talked about how good the Hitchcockian direction is. Again, going back to some of the shortcomings with the direction. I just don't think it was staged very well. Like the way that the wall is where Jack's at, it's very brightly lit. And so when Rice looks over, when the Michael Murphy character looks over and it's like obvious there's nobody there. I just think that and again, I'm not into the coulda, woulda, shoulda kind of thing, but it just would have been more interesting and less confusing and better staged if it was dark or shadowy. And yeah, Davey's yelling to somebody and it confuses Rice because, you know, maybe he knows because he thinks that Davey has a fake gun, right? But then there's a shot of a shadow where you see the silencer on it. And Rice, I don't know if it's clear enough where he's like, is that a real gun or not? So that could have confused him. And then Davey keeps yelling. And so he keeps looking over at this shadowy part because they established that when he's hiding in the, like again, on the ground and Alvarez is trying to spot him. But like, just if they'd staged it better, like you can't really see. So Rice getting in his mindset, is there somebody over there? And it confused. So he, you know what I'm saying? Like the staging just wasn't effective enough to sell that. It was
the moment after that I thought was really good when he gets really mad at Jack Flack and he takes the character and he stomps on it, and that's when the blood starts to flow from the bullet holes, which, you know, I thought was really effective.
Yeah, and then that was a nice little touch. It was like, oh, I hate this when, you know, they stop believing, leaving because they stop believing. And he even says, like, your dad did this too. It's like, so the Jack Flack character has been in his dad's life. They're hinting at the dad also had an imaginary friend. I thought that was an interesting, and that's what I mean. Like that was handled very interestingly, as opposed to the is there a real Jack Flack that Rice has to shoot at. But I think that has to do with the writing. I think that has to do with Tom Holland's screenplay. Just the way that it's written is very effective. And again, it goes even deeper in that with and I don't know if this is something that you wanted to kind of lead the discussion on, but the fact that they're dealing with the loss of their mom, and Hal's dealing with the loss of his wife. The note that I had, I think there was a part during Neverending Story where the Gerald McRaney character is talking to Bastian, the dad, and they're talking about like losing the mom and stuff like that. But I think they lose that thread. I don't think that's really talked about anymore. It's kind of mentioned that, and it's kind of, oh, this is why but they never really delve into it. What I'm going to use the word that is more than love. What I adored about this screenplay is they bring it up. You know, the Robert Doquey, the police officer shows up and Hal's explaining to him, well, we lost our mom and I can't deal with it right now because I got my job. And he's explaining this stuff, which any dad, he needs to unload on somebody. He's got all this pain. It seems very expositionary, but I just thought it was like the dad doesn't have anybody to talk to. And so he's just unloading on this cop who's just there to listen. He's telling him, you know, he's obviously dealing with the problems. I'm taking him to a counselor, you know, or a therapist. We're trying to deal with this. And the whole movie is about that. You can see that Davey is involving himself in this fantasy world to cope with the pain of losing his mom. And what the note that I have here, the screenplay suggests that the loss of the mother is causing David to retreat in this imaginary world as a coping mechanism. How he's also dealing with it. He's taken the appropriate steps, like we said. He's taken him to a therapist. He talks to let's go see him again, the doctor again. But he's too busy. He's got his job that he's worried about. He's a military man. He's got all this to deal with, and the dad isn't dealing with it very well either. There's a part where they're trying to bond, and Davy's like, oh, I've got the game, and there's something to do with it. And he does, they're playing the games or whatever. And after a while, it's just the dad goes, okay, I can't do this anymore. I've got to get to bed or stuff like that. And, and then Davy says, I hate you. And they have a conversation, like Hal stops and goes, I know you don't mean that. And they talk for a little bit.
Yeah.
Just the screenplay does these for a kid's movie. It's about a kid running around, getting involved in murder. And you say, oh, so you get in a mindset of what you're going to watch. But just those touches, and it goes all the way through the movie. At the end, when Hal is calling and he finds out that the cops have inexplicably found the bodies and they've tied it to Davy's disappearance for whatever reason. Yeah. Like, even he goes, why didn't I believe him? And that's what causes that whole ending when he goes to the airplane. So it deals with that trauma all through the movie. It's not just there as like pillow, like feathery kind of place setting stuff. It's a theme that runs through the whole movie, and I just adored that. It's just it's there and it's handled so subtly. I think it's great.
Yeah, I thought it was well done too. I will say this though, like there's a lot more trauma that Davy goes through, so he's going to have even more PTSD. With having to have people break into his house, kidnap his friend. He has to shoot somebody. He gets in car crashes. He gets dropped off of an airplane. So if he's seeing a therapist now, he's going to need therapy when he gets older as well.
He's seen his dad inexplicably survive a nuclear explosion.
That's one thing I want to mention too. Like he I don't know how he survived that. And he walks out with just like a couple little patches of what do you call it? Smoke dust or whatever on his
something
face.
like that. He's just scarred, or it's
like there's no burns, there's no nothing. But Jack Flack always escapes, so that's like obviously the tagline of the movie, and it's obviously one of the last lines, and it's a great way to end the movie.
Well, that's what I had. It was like, this is convenient, that the dad survives, you know what I mean? But it's like, as an emotional moment, I love how, again, what I love about the last thing you see with Jack is, they have that scene, which is, again, is really well done. I like the staging of it. I like that Davy stamps on the toy figure, and that's what causes him to bleed.
Yeah.
And then they have their goodbye scene, and Jack says, go get me my smokes, really. And so he walks off and he disappears. But then he has like the Obi-Wan Kenobi moment where Davy's like, I can't do this on my own. And Jack says, you can do it. You have been doing this on your own. Mm-hmm. Like, go save Kim, Davy, which is like the use the Force Luke moment.
Right.
So the last words he hears from Jack is a voiceover. And when his dad comes on the plane to rescue him, he doesn't you're kind of caught up in the situation. He doesn't recognize his dad as the pilot. But I just thought it was a neat tie-in that how Hal is able to tell Davy that he's on the plane is over a voiceover.
Right.
Is over the intercom. Again, another nice touch.
Yeah, I like that too.
And when he throws him out of the plane, I just like that the stakes gradually build. Like, it gets more serious and it starts having more impact. And you realize that he could get hurt or stuff like that. And when Davy's running after the plane, like, again, that gets me as the father-son stuff being my kryptonite. I just thought it works emotionally. The part where he says Jack Flack always escapes, and he goes, it doesn't matter. It's like, I've got you. And they've bonded. It's about them realizing that they need each other. I don't know. Just wow. Just great.
Did you like the freeze frame ending, or would you have rather had seen more of a denouement at the end, or kind of wrap things up with the rest of the characters?
Well, I don't think a denouement was necessary because you get Kim and her mom and all that stuff. So I don't think I needed that. I don't know about the freeze frame working, but again, it's just a very 70s/80s thing to do.
Right. I would go against the freeze frame idea because I thought it was kind of cheesy. But I kind of wanted to see Kim's mom and Hal get together.
Right. Well, they hint at it enough that you can kind of get that, you know what I mean? You can kind of parse out the information that they will get together and they're bonding over it. So that's there. I don't know if you necessarily need it, but I don't know. I don't know if it would hurt the movie either way.
Yeah. One other thing I want to mention real quick is The music I thought was okay. It was definitely, the in the 80s era style of music. But I thought there was just too much of it.
Oh.
I wanted a lot less of it. I mean, I
Yeah.
liked what there was, but I just kind of got overbearing sometimes.
Yeah, that's David, not David, that's Brian May, who I thought was the guitarist for Queen at first, but no, Brian May, who did the Mad Max movies and Freddy's
Okay.
Dead, The Final Nightmare, to tie that into our Nightmare on Elm Street episode. Yeah, I saw his name and I was like, oh, that's cool. But yeah, there were parts of like, well, the music is really overselling this moment. Like
Right,
you didn't
right.
need the music to
Yeah,
tell
you
me that we're
didn't,
supposed
yeah.
to. So yeah, I agree with that.
Anything else?
Well, we didn't talk about the opening. I thought that the opening was
We
very
did, yeah.
funny. It was kind of reminiscent of a few things. It was reminiscent of True Lies, I thought, with the Harry Tasker character showing up, kind of trying to infiltrate this castle or whatever as a spy. I thought that was funny. It reminded me of the Naked Gun because you have the Sheik character, the Ayatollah Khomeini character that comes out, and then you have the Noriega like general come out, which I think those are in the opening of the Naked Gun from the Files of Police Squad from '88. They had those characters.
Okay.
So I thought that was fun. I was like, oh, this is obviously a kid's version. Like
Yeah.
it's hard to these days, the wokeisms and stuff like that. Like we could take that as being racist, but it's a kid's imagination and it's an 80s board game. Of course that would be. But the third thing that I thought it was reminiscent of is the Lego movie, where the Lego, like you kind of realize that you're involved in an animated world with the Legos, but then gradually there are these little touches, like the thing with the Q-tip, or the thing with the crazy glue, or the way that the Morgan Freeman character is floating around on a string. You're like, is this like, what's going on? Like, is this really an imagine? And it turns out that it's a kid enacting this stuff.
Right.
And then it's a real, so the part where it kind of builds and he shoots the woman just by, or it ricochets off his hat or whatever. And then he's being chased. And then all of a sudden the cubes, I broke out laughing because I just thought that was really funny. But even
My kids right away like, those are dice.
those are nice.
Right away, they knew it was dice.
Absolutely.
Wow.
But then the Jack Flack, he like gets lifted up with the like that
Yeah.
noise. I thought that was really funny. Just as
I loved the American flag parachute. I loved how it
Yeah.
got stuck into his backpack, and then like
an action figure, right?
yeah, and I loved how he was just kind of standing on the side of the stairs, just watching as they're getting out of the car. Like he's
Yeah.
no one is noticing him. He's just standing there. Like he kind of comes in and saves the day.
Right.
I thought it was great.
Right. What did you think about? We should have talked about this when we talked about Henry Thomas. But did you like the sound effects that he was making?
Oh yeah, I was gonna say that is something that I definitely did when I was a kid. I would play, with GI Joes, and I would make those gun sound effects. And I remember I had a friend of mine tell me that I told him how to make a Star Wars, sound effect. And what you do is you just say the word tissue really fast, like tissue, tissue. And I was like, I told you that? Because the way I did gun sounds was like that, you know what I mean? So did you have a way that you did it when you were younger? Like, what did you do?
Well, obviously with our Transformers episode, I played with my Transformers and I had all the voices for the individual characters. Just the pew, that kind of thing.
Right, yeah.
But I hope I didn't do like what the girls do when they play. It's like the pew, pew, pew. You have the guys that are going
right.
And then the girls pew, 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 pew. But yeah, again, that's a very relatable thing. I like that. It reminded me of me. So that was a nice.
That was fun. Let's see. Anything else? I think I'm good. I think I got everything. What about you?
Yeah, I got everything. I guess the only other thing too, another thing that really made me laugh, I liked how during the chase scene with the car in the garage, like Alvarez points his gun at the car and Rice says, "Don't shoot at my car. What are you, crazy?" And then like 2 shots later, Rice is shooting at his car.
Yeah. I love the street sweeper. He's like, sweeper. I expected to come out, this thing all shiny and clean. But
Yeah. And the part of the end too, I thought was funny in the airport where the pilot comes in and is like, he says he wants a pilot. And then later, like the guy that does the cones or whatever, the lights, he goes, he says he won't negotiate. Like they pop in. I'm like, is that a Naked Gun character?
who's he talking to?
Yeah, no kidding.
Who's he negotiating with?
I thought that was funny. So again, they had a lot of the kiddie stuff, but I think it kind of balanced well with the deeper meanings that went on.
Yeah, it was a good mix of, stuff that would keep adults interested, but also keep, kids entertained. So
yeah,
I thought it was really well done. I'll go first and say that I think it should be remembered. I can see them remaking it, and I can see them trying to put a more modern spin on it and everything, but I think they shouldn't. I think you should leave it alone, let it be what it is. It's worth remembering.
Yeah, absolutely worth remembering. Again, you could update it with the new video game. There are parts that you could do tighter. I just don't think there's a way you could better the Hitchcockian stuff. having the deeper meanings in there, and it really, really affecting me, where I got teary-eyed at the end, where I thought, when you think Hal's dead.
It actually surprised me. I got emotional right there that moment too. And I was like, why am I getting emotional?
Yeah.
I was like,
because you know what happens, right? I just think that the screenplay just is very well layered, and it does a good job of getting you there to that point where you feel it, where it doesn't matter that how did he survive it? Like the fact that he's there and they're together and they've gone through this experience where they're closer together and they bond.
And then, Davey realizes that his dad's the actual hero.
Which is there all along because he imagines Jack as his dad, just a cooler version of his dad. And I don't think there's any bettering Henry Thomas. There's no bettering the warmth that Dabney Coleman has. I don't think we talked about Dabney Coleman like at all during our first 50 episodes. But he was a mainstay of the 80s. Like he was there and he did a good job and everybody loved him. Even reading the interviews, like he says something about, there's a brief snippet where he talks about the movie and he says that he and Franklin didn't get along. But then he says, I'm not going to go into it. That's personal stuff. I don't have to talk about that. And then he goes on and talks about what a great actor Henry Thomas was. And just the warmth of Dabney Coleman and the good guy that you get from him. That you mostly get from even when he's playing slime balls, like in 9 to 5. I don't think there's any bettering that. So,
the only thing I can think of that needs to be better was the little girl's performance. If they get a better actress to play Kim, I would have been happier.
Right, but it's one of those things where it's not worth like redoing a whole movie just for these little, you know what I mean? So everything that works beautifully. Some of the direction could have been stronger, but then again, there are parts where the direction is just perfect. So it's hard to say that this is worth remembering when everything's right there and everything works. So absolutely worth remembering, I think.
All right, very good. So real quick, my son loved the movie and he wanted to kind of give his 2 cents of what he thinks of it. And I thought it'd be great because you and I, we're older now. We kind of see things differently. We have different perspective. So it'd be kind of good to have a young kid's perspective of the movie and see what he thinks, because this is who the movie was made for, right? So we'll let Ethan come on and tell us what he thinks. And then after that, we'll come back in our outro and we can do our top 3 imaginary friend movies. What do you think?
Okay, that sounds great.
Hi, my name's Ethan, and today I'm on this podcast, now called NostalgiaCast, made by my dad, and we're talking about Cloak and Dagger. And I watched it. It was I'd say it's a pretty good film. Like it really is pretty good. I didn't like the Kim character really. She was fine, but her acting at one point was like she's not like screaming. She's not like her acting's not that great. But to me, she's not. I feel like they should have like amplified that character a bit more. 2, I didn't think I liked how they killed off Mobius. I mean, I really liked that guy. He was a fun dude. He's a fun dude. He's a gamer, and I like gamers. I actually I really liked the Jack Flack guy. He was pretty fun. I do have some questions on the whole, like, he fades away, how he was an imaginary friend, right? So then once he didn't want his imaginary friend anymore, he was, like, it felt like he was an actual person when he, like, died and, like, left. I really felt something there. Some things I didn't really find that realistic, like when he like walked out of the explosion of a fiery explosion, it's not smoke, it's fire. You're gonna die there. He would have died if the other couple died. He died, and when there might be odds that he survived, but he would be burned severely. And also, what about the dead body in the beginning of the movie? The dead body just fell on the ground and then it disappeared, making him look like an insane person. How did they clean up that fast? Also, really, the twist with the grandma and the grandpa being the bad guys, I don't know. That feels a bit not amazing. I mean, that twist was like I guess, but like, there's other people that would have like helped him. So I don't know. I guess it's fun. It's a fun little twist. Also, I actually want to mention about the podcast. I really liked your last episode, guys. It was really fun. Like, I could tell you guys loved the Back to the Future. And many points I just adore of what you guys did there. It was fun. The last video, however, how the heck do you not like that movie? I love that movie. Like, okay, some things may like I would like to have it taken out, but it was hilarious. My brothers and me loved that movie, and I love that. That's the best version of that tale. To me, that is the best version because Jim Carrey just makes it so cool in that one. That's kind of all I got for now. And I really like this podcast, like last episode. Dude, but a lot of what you guys do is fun, and I enjoy what you guys do. But I'll see you on like my channel, Papa Toy Theater. I do tons of stuff, and so I'll see you guys next time if I am coming on. I want to come back on again. So I'll see you then. Bye.
Okay, welcome back. I want to thank Ethan for sharing his thoughts on Cloak and Dagger. Thanks, Ethan. And Darin, let's go ahead and do a top 3 imaginary friend movies. I think this would be kind of fun because I've always loved this kind of dynamic in movies where they have like a character that someone can't see. In fact, I even wrote a screenplay with an imaginary friend, and so maybe one day we'll make that movie and we can, that'd be on my list. But right now, I'll go ahead and pick movies that are actually been made. My first pick is kind of a dark movie, and it's a movie that really impressed me. It's on my list, but we probably won't do it till like, future episodes. But I had to pick Fight Club. Like Fight Club's number 1 for me. When Tyler Durden was
spoiler alert, first of all,
that he was or that Jack was Tyler Durden, that really took me for a loop when I first saw that movie. And so I've always loved that, the imaginary friend part of that movie.
Yeah, well, I guess it could kind of tie in like the 3 big movies that year that had twists. They had The Sixth Sense, which obviously everyone remembers. You have Fight Club, and then you had a movie called Arlington Road, which all had really good twists. Yeah. And out of those 3, I actually think The Sixth Sense had the least engaging twist. I liked it, but the Arlington Road twist was fun because it's all about paranoia. But then the Fight Club, I really liked that. It was a nice kind of.
Did you see it coming when you saw that movie? Did you see that coming? Because I didn't.
No, but it was one of those things where it didn't take me out of the movie. I just thought, oh, he's been like, that explains a lot, what I mean? Yeah. So yeah, that worked. So that's great. So my number 1, I'm going to go in order of release. Obviously, I can't go without mentioning Harvey. James Stewart. Good. That's just a perennial. It's like we talked about in our intro, like kind of a formative movie. It's got James Stewart imagining a giant like a rabbit that walks around, but it's also a story about alcoholism and the kind of like directions it pushes us in. And it's funny how like everybody's trying to get him committed, and then I think his sister gets committed herself because she does mention that she's seen Harvey. So it's kind of a fun little twist on that as far as like the message of alcoholism. I guess that's weird, but it is kind of a dark movie that has kind of a fun comedic edge to it. So Harvey, can't go without mentioning that.
Yep, can't go without that one.
From 1950. I do have to mention that. It's an old one.
Okay. My next pick is going to be a newer movie. I think I saw it maybe a few years ago. And this is a movie called Jojo Rabbit. Have you heard of that?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Taika Waititi. Yep.
I love it because I love that the imaginary friend is Hitler, but I like that it's the how a kid would imagine Hitler to be. You know what I mean? Like, and he's very flamboyant, very eccentric, and I just thought it was really well done, and it was really funny.
Yeah, that's one of those movies that had some pushback because like Hitler, why would you want it? But it's like, guys, it's a comedy and it's a kid, like, and he's not obviously the real Hitler, that kind of thing. Right. My favorite story, I think they did a podcast that I listened to. There's a round table for that year, and Taika Waititi was talking about how he directed the movie. Like, he thought it was surreal, like telling people what to do on set while in a Hitler costume. Just really funny. I love Waititi, and I love his personality in there. So my second movie, and again, it's just a small part of the movie, but it's very formative for you and me. I'm going to bring up True Romance. Tony Scott, 1993. Obviously, my first experience with Quentin Tarantino, but it has. What I loved about True Romance is it was like a mind blower for me because I didn't expect a movie to talk about other movies and talk about comic books and talk about, other genres and just, it was very aware. And I was like, what is this? Like, I'm not used to movies talking like this. But obviously having the Christian Slater, the Clarence Worley character, have Elvis, played by Val Kilmer, as his imaginary friend and kind of his like confidant and his support system. Because he has that conversation at the beginning where he's talking about Elvis and what he would do, like, even though he's a guy, what he would do to Elvis if he could, and how beautiful that man was, and just how he has him as his guide spiritual guide, so to speak. And I like how Tony Scott shoots it where you never really see Val Kilmer's face. It's just
right. I was going to say that. I love that too.
Yeah, it kind of hints at it. So again, just one part of a larger movie that just kind of a mind blower for me. When you get all that stuff that happens, of course he's going to have Elvis is somebody that he talks to. So very natural for that.
They named their son Elvis too.
That's right. Even though Alabama preferred, they wouldn't have. I get it.
Yeah. Okay, so my number 3, this is a movie that I didn't really like when I first saw it, but it took watching it 3 or 4 times to finally go, this is kind of funny. And that is Drop Dead Fred. It's silly, it's crazy, it's wacky, it's kind of dark, which is why I like it now. But again, just a fun, crazy, silly movie.
They did a How Did This Get Made episode on that, where it was June and Jason and Paul and a special guest. I can't remember who was on, but it was just really funny about how some people just thought it was one of the, like half of them thought it was one of the stupidest movies they'd ever seen, and the other half thought it was like really deep and had a lot of deeper meanings. And they kept like sneaking off to different sides of the stage to be able to talk about like how they were going to go and attack the so funny. So yeah, that's a good one. I haven't seen it in forever, but I do like Phoebe Cates. So my third choice, again, going in chronological order, might be kind of stretching a little bit, but I've got Castaway as my third, because you've got Wilson, who's there. And again, it's not really, you never get that the Chuck Nolan, the Tom Hanks character is imagining like that this walking volleyball. It's just there to keep him company, which is a very, number one, Castaway. We talked about Zemeckis last time. Castaway is up there with one of my favorite Zemeckis movies, just because of the themes about time and how we can't let it get away from us, because then we lose things that are precious. I love the way they filmed it. I love how they shot the beginning with kind of a chubbier Tom Hanks, and then they took a break for 6 months while Tom Hanks lost the weight. And then Zemeckis went and made What Lies Beneath during that time. I just thought that was just a brilliant point. And then they came back and then we shot it. Yeah. But the other thing is that Tom Hanks is one of maybe the only actor who could carry a movie by himself like that. They tried with Will Smith in I Am Legend.
They tried, right? Yeah,
they had introduced a dog. They had introduced the mother and her son that comes in at the end, because the screenplay runs out of things to say. But just that it's a brilliant screenplay move in Castaway that they use this volleyball as kind of a sounding board. And the story I always love to tell is you spend so much time on that island and you spend so much time with the Tom Hanks character that when they escape and Chuck loses Wilson, right? I remember sitting in that theater and my wife and I, when he loses him and he can't get to him and he's just sobbing, crying out Wilson's name, but how sorry he is. And Elizabeth and I were just sobbing in the theater, and we're like, it's a volleyball. And I think it ties in with the Cloak and Dagger thing, where it builds to that point where you buy the emotional stakes of it. You buy it so much that you're just involved, no matter how ridiculous it is. So again, Castaway is one that I had to mention as something that an imaginary friend, or how that would kind of impact you.
All right, that sounds good. Okay. Well, that'll do it. But I think next time we have a guest, right?
Right. One of my podcasting friends, David Rosen, who hosts the Piecing It Together podcast. Wow, this is one of those guys, like, getting addicted to podcasts. His has been one that I've been addicted to for a while, and we'll chat about what his podcast is all about. But he does have guests, and they chat about current movies and how they relate to movies made in the past. And he's got a great voice. He's a composer too, so he's composed a lot of music for films, and so I'm in awe of this guy. I'm in awe of a lot of people on Twitter. I'm in awe with David that he chats with me, and like, he's agreed to come on the podcast, and just listening to his music, I'm like, this guy is going to be on the podcast. Like, he's agreed to chat with us. And so he's chosen to talk about Little Shop of Horrors.
Okay.
From 1986, which is a movie that I've been meaning to revisit, maybe not for the show, but it's always been something that's like, oh, Little Shop of Horrors. I should really check that out again sometime. Again, Frank Oz movie with Steve Martin, Rick Moranis.
Rick Moranis again. We always keep bringing him back.
Always keep bringing him up. So that would be a fun one to talk about. So we've got a great friend, David Rosen, on next time to chat Little Shop of Horrors with us.
That'll be a lot of fun.
Yep.
Okay, then for NostalgiaCast, I am Johnny Craddock.
And I'm Darin Lundberg.
And we'll see you next time.
Bye, guys.